All right, we are starting right away. Thank you all for joining. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Lanre Newton and I'm the CEO of Holistic Business Solutions. We're here today because of the Access to Finance Clinic for private schools that we've been holding. We started this yesterday with another opportunity for private schools. But today we're here with our partner, Scholé, and we're here to talk about international investment and the opportunity to join a group of Pan-African schools delivering world-class education. So I'm happy that we're all here. And yes, we have a lot planned for today. The agenda is very simple. My friend and colleague, Catherine, would be delivering a presentation. And at the end of that, we'll be having a Q&A session. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Catherine, who is our facilitator for today. I'll just quickly share an introduction. She's the founder and director of Scholé. She also co-founded Challenge Partners, the leading school improvement network in the UK with 500 school members. She led the development of strategies to improve the effectiveness of ARC, a leading school operator. 6 years with the UK Training and Development Agency, including development of the National School Improvement Planning Framework used by over 10,000 schools. In her early experience of education, she was in sub-Saharan Africa as a teacher in Kenya, and she helped set up a primary school in Uganda. In Scholé, Catherine has the responsibility for teaching, learning, and academic performance of their schools. So without further ado, Catherine, you can go ahead and share your presentation, and we'd love to have you tell us about what you have for us today over the next 20 minutes.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Lanre, for that introduction, and thank you everybody for coming to webinar your time. We'll share the screen with you, and we'll share with you and what we've been doing and where we think we're going. And we'd love to hear questions from you at the end. We've also already had a number of questions through the Google form, and I will try to address as many of those as possible through the presentation. But we've allowed a substantial amount of time at the end for questions as well. So forgive me if I don't manage to answer your question in the presentation. So there we go. So I'll take you through sort of who we are, how we work, and then give you some specific examples of things, the schools that we work of, schools across you're noting that these are high quality, affordable international schools. Though actually we've done some work with international schools, but the aspiration for the group is around the sort of affordable end of the market, and where we believe that we can add significant value, working with high quality schools founded by African owners, but bringing UK expertise and drawing on global best practice and also global research and the global evidence base. We have 8 years experience of school acquisition and improvement, including the management of Kenya's top school, top local curriculum school, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail. We're now actively, so we're currently active in Kenya and Uganda, and we are now looking to expand beyond those territories as well as in those territories. And we're actively looking in Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. So this gives you an idea of where we are, where we came from. So our very first experience in Africa was setting up 5 schools in Solwezi for a mining company. So Trident College is right at the top of the tree. They aim to mimic, to deliver the sort of best of the UK private school education experience, and then as a mining company, and so the mining company has to provide the entire infrastructure from schools to golf clubs to houses, etc. And that was our first venture in the region in 2012. Since then, we have also run schools in Zambia. We've done school improvement programs in Tanzania, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the schools in yellow at the top, because these relate directly to this particular presentation: Kisubi schools and Makini schools. So both of these schools we identified on behalf of investors. We did the due diligence process for them. We acquired them. Two different investors. So we're working with Pansofic, which is international school in Bern, and they also own a group of charter schools in the US. And they've recently secured another round of funding. Effectively, Africa's largest education business. They run premium. It's on the South African international school model, so it's sort of like a lower cost international school. It's not like the $20,000 international schools, and they have begun venturing outside South Africa. So their first investment was they owned the International School of Botswana. And they also own the Makini schools in Kenya, and then we are also currently raising investment with another investor to create a pan-African education business. So although this business is focused on the local curriculum, our other two investors do have interests in international schools. So it is a question of identifying a match, identifying the fit. So if you are an international school, we can still have a good conversation, because we do know investors who, who've invested in international schools. We are hoping to, aiming to set up a group. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button by mistake. A group to acquire up to 50 schools, educating 40,000 students over the next few years. Now, everything has really slowed down because of COVID, and things are, it takes a while to do a full acquisition if that's where you're going. It can take up to 2 years to complete all the due diligence and all the sort of legal and financial and all the rest of it. And things have slowed down over COVID, but things are starting to pick up again now. So this is very good timing for this presentation. I know Nigeria has in many ways been a lot more open than many other countries, but Uganda, for example, is still largely closed, and Kenya only actually opened up a couple of months ago. So other places are still slowly emerging, and in the UK we're only going back next week. Our aspiration for this group of schools is not just that it'll be a group of outstanding schools, but it'll be a group of schools that has an impact, a wider impact, an impact through the students that it educates, educating them in their responsibility to be leaders of tomorrow, and developing a model that works. So we believe our experience is that there's some really outstanding practice in schools in Africa, but also there are some ways in which we can develop and improve those schools. And we believe that we have a very interesting model of blending those two different approaches. We hope that our group of schools would set standards and influence others. So seeing what can work, and many of your schools may already be doing this. And so I hope our aspiration will be aligned in that way. Influencing system change. In the UK, really outstanding schools have been invited to become teaching schools, which means they are centres for teacher training. And this is a very powerful and important shift, because our teacher training used to be very top down, all delivered by government, through government training centres, and now our teacher training is predominantly school based, and that's been really, really important. It's much more practice based, but it's still linked with universities, so it's a blend. And so these really outstanding schools are able to share their outstanding practice as well as deliver high quality training programs, because they're drawing on real life experience. I'm now going to hand over to Lanre. So I mentioned we're looking in Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. We are very much looking to work through local partners because we fully value the experience that they have. We fully recognise that although we really know schools and teaching and school leadership, we don't know Nigeria, we don't know your market, and we don't know your schools. And so it is absolutely paramount that we have people to work with who are well positioned, not only to help us with market entry, but also to help us with delivering some of that school improvement. Lanre.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Just very quickly, we're working with Scholé as the local partner in Nigeria. And of course, Holistic Business Solutions is an advisory firm, and we have expertise in both finance and education. We also have huge expertise around working with partners to select the best fit of companies that meet their funding needs. We've done this with Stanford University, we've done this with Oxfam, we've done this as a business development service provider for Bank of Industry, UK Aid projects, World Bank projects, and Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. So this is where we are coming in, and as we go ahead, you'll be hearing more from us if you're interested in moving forward after Catherine's presentation. So I'll hand over back to Catherine for her to move on with her presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Lanre. I will pick up from here. I hope, I think that, I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi or hers that's frozen, but
it's
we'll continue on. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about it. Is hers, is it? Okay, never mind. I think, to be honest, actually, that she was, and you will receive the slide, and actually, I suspect most of you probably know her anyway. So I will continue on a little bit about how we work with schools. So looking at introducing educational improvements. So we do a lot around the quality of teaching. So there's been a lot of global research that shows how important the quality of teaching is. The difference between having a teacher in the bottom 25% and a teacher in the top 25% of the teaching body, if you like, can make as much as 2 years difference for a student. And that's something that's actually driven school improvement in the UK since Michael Barber's report was published in 2003. And so there've been a lot of systems and processes around that, many of which have made it across the globe into a wide range of schools. But certainly, I mean, things like continuous professional development as a norm and as an expectation, and actually almost as a right for teachers, ongoing training. I mean, I hope I'm not sort of patronizing you here, but when we went to Uganda, the head teacher said, our teachers don't need training, they have already been trained. And so the school we were in certainly didn't have that expectation of ongoing teacher development. We also train the leadership in things like learning walks, walking around the school, having a quick look at what's going on, maybe popping into a classroom for 5 minutes, and then giving the teacher some instant, in the moment feedback. I really, really love the way you did that, and here's one thing to think about. And so that expectation of improvement is continuous and ongoing. We also do formal lesson observations where we assess the delivery of particular lessons, which contributes towards teachers' appraisals. Using pupil assessment and data to drive more effective teaching, again, sort of analysis of where best to focus efforts, identifying gaps, where children maybe just don't get something or have missed something, and looking at progress. So shifting that pedagogy towards student-centered and personalized learning, starting from where the student is at. And an example of this, when we did a lesson observation, which I was part of in Makini, which is the best school in Kenya, best school group in Kenya, local curriculum. And to sort of bring this to life a little bit, I saw a lesson with, I think, a bunch of 5-year-olds in PP2, and they were learning, the lesson was on the 4 colours, red, yellow, blue, green. And the teacher spent a long time sort of like, what colour is this? Oh, it's red, and she'd also drawn in their books 8 circles, 2 in each colour they had to match. 8 hand-drawn and hand-coloured circles in 21 children's books. Now, my observation on seeing that lesson was the teacher was very enthusiastic, the teacher was committed, the teacher was delivering the curriculum, the children were engaged, they enjoyed the lesson. But I don't think any learning took place at all, because every single one of those students already knew the 4 colours at the beginning of the lesson. So a more personalised and student-centred learning approach might have been to ask the students to find out, first of all, whether they did know the 4 colours, and then the teacher could have used the opportunity to broaden the teaching, to extend the teaching to a wider range of colours. We also challenged the amount of time she'd spent hand drawing and colouring in the circles, which could have been better spent on something else. So just a very, very simple example of how even a good teacher in an outstanding school can benefit from observation and feedback. And of course, all of this is with the school leaders, working with the school leaders to support and develop these systems. We look at the co-curricular and pastoral offer. Again, pastoral is quite big for us. In Kisubi, we have a deputy head responsible for pastoral, which covers things like behaviour as well as student needs, and recommending classroom resources and introducing education technology. And this education technology has actually been one of our really big wins from the pandemic. As our teachers now hugely, and our children, students have now hugely improved their use of technology and the way they access it. So we're looking to build on that. Operational improvements include financial systems and processes. In Kisubi in Uganda, we were starting from quite a low base. None of our teachers had bank accounts, and everything was cash in the drawer. And so, of course, it was incredibly hard to keep hold of payments. So school fees were being paid directly to teachers. And so the accountability there was really weak. You didn't know how much was coming in or where it was going or how it was being spent. So we set up payroll systems. All of the teachers now have paid directly into their bank accounts. They were also not being paid regularly. So our teachers are all paid on time every month, which helps improve morale and people feeling valued. The reporting and financial systems are incredibly important for investors. So our investors in the US have direct sight of the school financial systems. Look at it, generate management accounts at the press of a button. Performance management systems. I've actually just been on a call this morning working with Makini on the development of performance management systems. So a system which is continuous improvement. So performance management and appraisal, basically, and looking at how that is linked to the line management system. And often it's a one-off event, and really the improvement of performance should be continuous. On IT, again, we've had a huge effect with IT systems around fee collection, knowing what's going on. And I mean, at school in Uganda, again, the fee collection was about 7%. It's now consistently 97%. In Nairobi, in Kenya, we've lifted it from it was about 92% to about 97%. We do a lot of marketing, branding. Also, I mean, we found both cases. One of the first things we need to look at is the maintenance of buildings. Some of it's about paint and tarmac to make it more attractive. Some of it's really, but we start from a really fundamental point of health and safety. So again, in Uganda, we had second floor dormitories with broken balconies or no balconies, and had a problem with snakes and mosquitoes and bare electrical wires and things like that. So looking first of all at the health and safety of the students, also looking at how we can take it beyond that to an attractive, well-maintained environment. At the heart of what we do, the Scholé promise is amazing academic progress, ready for work and confidence. This is the promise we make to all our students. We recognise that when we take a school on, it already has its own culture. And in the Makini School, a very, very strong culture. This school's been run for 40 years by an outstanding Kenyan entrepreneur, and they are a very strong Kenyan brand, a very strong identity. We don't look to impose our promise on the schools, but we work with the schools so that they can articulate what they do in an easy to understand way for parents and students. Amazing academic progress, at the heart of this is that we don't focus only on the Division 1 children or the top performers, but we aim that every child, regardless of what their starting point, should consistently exceed expectations. So it's about progress in their academic achievement. There are some children who may never make a Division 1, and actually a Division 3 could be a really, really significant achievement that child has worked hard to achieve, and so should be celebrated and recognised. Ready for work encompasses a range of things. So we start off by looking at what the school is already doing in that area. So it could be things like things that sit outside the formal curriculum, which may include things like tech skills and things like St John's Ambulance. It's a very early preparatory towards thinking about medical careers, things like careers days, links with alumni, links with businesses. And also in Uganda, we have a very strong emphasis on entrepreneurship. We run live entrepreneurial projects and competitions for the students. And then confidence is about the pastoral student well-being. So it starts off with students being confident in themselves and encouraged. So it's a warm, positive, to a very, very simple level. We don't say don't grass, we say please run on the path. So we try to use positive language throughout to achieve the same end. And we're also giving children opportunities to make decisions and to develop their own confidence. So it could be leadership opportunities, could be speaking opportunities, opportunities to run their own project or engage with things that they personally are interested in. And we hope that our children will have a happy and successful life. And I'm going to talk to you about two sort of specific projects or ways of two specific schools. First is a project, Bright Talk. So as I mentioned earlier, this is our beautiful campus in Uganda, and secondary boarding school. We've been managing the school since 2015. We set up a primary day school in 2018. So we have a lot of learners at kindergarten and very few at the higher end of the school because we're growing the school year by year. And so when we went into lockdown, we sort of started pushing out work packs, as you do. Put them up online and start collecting them. But it's hard. It's very hard for parents who are not trained teachers. Not all of our parents speak English. And with things like maths, not all of our parents are confident in maths. And certainly very young learners don't particularly want to engage with work packs. So we were thinking, what on earth can we do with these young learners who actually schools haven't been open since March 2020, so that's a full year now. And there is no plan yet for the youngest learners below the exam classes to return at all. So it's a bit open-ended. And so what we're thinking is, what can we do that is super simple, that a parent can do it without special skills, not even English, which fits into the life of a busy parent, because some of our parents leave. I mean, when we came out of lockdown, some in Uganda, some of our parents leave work before their children get up, and they come home from work after their children have gone to bed, and they're time poor. They don't have very much time in a busy family life. But something that would develop higher order skills in learners. So in Uganda and in Kenya, we have new curricula, and they look at these higher order skills. They call them competency-based curriculum in Kenya. It includes things like curiosity and imagination and critical thinking, problem solving. And these are some of the these are difficult for teachers who've been trained and practiced in more traditional in sort of academic subjects, and so we're thinking this is something we could actually do at home, which is not only benefit in lockdown, but will also actually improve the way that students get with the curriculum in regular school life. So we designed a program that is entirely talk based. And it's very simplest. Parents receive a WhatsApp message twice a week to start with, and then once a week for the final 4 weeks. So the first 6 weeks are twice a week, and it suggests activities that they can do very easily with children. So at a very simple level, one of the activities is in the morning, ask your child, what are you going to do today? In the evening, ask them, how was your day? But they've been incredibly impressed by how this develops students' ability to plan, thinking ahead. They've been surprised that their children do all of this. And another of our activities, storytelling. Tell your child a story about where you grew up, has been massively successful. Now, academically, that's the beginning of historical thinking, and our children have been surprised that their parents were once a child, and they've been very curious. But what was it like when you were a child? What did you eat? Were there cars? And so this is the beginning of realizing that the past was different. Bright Talk, we're now running it in a number of different areas, including Rwanda and the UK. We launched with 2 schools in the UK in January, and launched with another 6 schools over the last couple of weeks. And the UK schools, although we're in lockdown, they decided to do the programme when we were not in lockdown, because they feel that it's really valuable in enhancing what they're doing in the classroom. And so, for example, if you're talking about where you grew up, you can have very good class discussions about that, and you can lead that into literacy. Because, of course, one of the key things about getting children writing is to get them writing about something they're interested in. Makini schools. As I mentioned, these are outstanding schools. They were outstanding. They've been outstanding for 40 years. They're founded by Mary Okello, who is now over 80 and wanted to retire. They're top performers academically, and they're also committed to whole child education. So there's a very good fit with the sort of pastoral and co-curricular. We introduced training for all of the teachers on child-centered learning, which I spoke about a bit earlier. So learning walks, lesson observations, lesson study, which is a way of co-planning lessons. And we have a partnership with an outstanding primary teaching school in London. They've been out a couple of times to help with our doing moderated lesson observations. And they've also been delivering some training sessions when they're over there. Purple Mash is an online program. It's an online world, actually. You can do all sorts of things there. Animation, English and maths, numeracy, literacy, creativity, programming, 3D design, it's aimed at children from the age of 3, and actually it's proved really valuable in lockdown. So they've used Purple Mesh to deliver a lot of the education. This is in Makini, to deliver a lot of the education over lockdown. Our makerspace is a dedicated room where we have some really nice equipment. We have a couple of Apple Macs, we have 4 Apple Macs, and some cheaper bits of kit. We have some robotics kit, and basically started running a co-curricular club there, where we run courses on web design, video editing, and other. Yes, I can't really remember all of the. We started off with web design, video editing, and robotics, and it's also our head of IT is based in there on a permanent basis, so that the students can come in break and make use of the work on projects that they're interested in, and make use of the facilities in their spare time. I mentioned a bit earlier, we did a lot of site improvements in Nairobi, some tarmac and paint. Also fundamental improvements to the buildings. We also opened a new primary site in Kisumu. We acquired a new building. We did a lot of refurbishment there, and extended in 2020 with a new 8-classroom block. And I'm just going to finish there with some quotes from what Makini leaders said about child-centered learning. As I mentioned, we feel that this ongoing professional development is really important, and so it's really important to us that it was so well received by these outstanding teachers and leaders in Kenya. So I'm going to hand back to Lanre, just to say we are actively looking for schools in those 3 target territories who are interested in investment and in working with us. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, do you want to stop sharing? We have a.
Shall I do that, or did you want to go into the appendix or not? That's why I've left it.
Yeah.
Or should I stop sharing?
Yeah.
I can stop sharing.
Okay, so we're back. Thank you, Catherine, again. Lovely presentation. I'm sure that we all gained something. I'll be moderating the Q&A, and we already have questions in the chat room, and I can see that some people already have their hands up. Thank you, guys. So I'll take the first question from Daisy, who says that, is there an acquisition criteria, and what is the process like?
Okay, so the thing about schools is they're all really different. No school is the same. You all know that about your own schools. And this isn't a standardized process, so it would be different for different schools, depending on the aspirations of the owner, depending on the size of the school, and the turnover of the school, and all the rest of it. So it is very much a tailored process, if you like. However, there are some similarities. Investors get their money from other investors, if you like. So our investors, so the American investors, for example, have just raised a fund. They raised it from, goodness knows where. It'll be a pot of different investors, from China or maybe from the Middle East, or other investors raise their money from local African families, wealthy families. They're called family offices, people who want to invest locally. But the money comes from somewhere, and there is a commonality to the process, that the investors, the people who raise the money, raise it on the basis that A, their money is safe, and B, they will get a return on their investment. So there is a process in which we will talk to a school. we would need to understand the school's financials, so need to see the data. We would understand the profit and loss, the accounts for the last 5 years, pupil numbers, exam results. There's a due diligence process. So at the beginning, relatively light touch, look at the financials, understand the objectives of the owners, and from that we would then sign what's called a term sheet, depending again on the investment that the owner wants. So this is in the event of a full acquisition. So this is if the owner wants to sell the school right now, here and now. This would be the process. We sign a term sheet, and that would set out our expectations about how the process is going to go. So it would include the expectation that that owner wants to sell the whole school. But again, there are refinements there, because in the example of Uganda, for example, the investors, the Americans there, own the school business and the land and the buildings. They own absolutely everything. In the case of the Makini schools, the investors own the school business. They don't own the land and buildings, which we rent from the previous owners. So, so a large sum of money is paid every year to the owners, who are the landlords. So the two things are separated out, the property business and the operational business. And so Avatec own the operational business, and the entrepreneurial family that set the schools up own the land and buildings on a long lease. So a term sheet would set out those things. And if you can both agree on the term sheet, which is maybe only a couple of pages, but it makes sure you're all moving in the same direction, that your expectations are shared. And at that point, you may not find common ground. You may have different objectives and it might not go anywhere. Then we embark on a process of due diligence. And in that point, so we would undertake this on behalf of the investors. It would be about checking the robustness of the data. So checking the number of pupils, checking the finances, understanding in detail things like outstanding debt and when that's due, and those kind of things. So a lot of it is around the financials, also about the prospects of the school. So we'd look at the recruitment trajectory for students. We look at things like capacity. So if, for example, you've got 50 students in a classroom built for 20, then the chances are is that we'd have to build more classrooms. There is clearly a cost to that. We'd have to estimate that cost. And the long and short of it is that we would put together an investment case, which we would share with the investors, and they would put to their investment committee. So the people who they've got the money from, if you know, they want to know, is this safe? So things like, is the school regulatorily compliant? You know, are they registered as a school? Are they paying their taxes? Are their staff paying their taxes? Are they paying NSSI in Uganda, national insurance in the UK, but whatever benefits the government sets out that a school needs to pay, is the school paying it? Because investors, in terms of safe, the investors don't want to get into trouble. They don't want the tax authorities or the local authority, district authorities, or the Ministry of Education on their back saying, you're not compliant, you need to pay a fine. So they need to understand fully what is the risk that they're taking on. And then the other thing is they need to understand what is the upside, what are the benefits. So again, I mean, if you are a wealthy Nigerian and you want to invest, you have some spare money, there are lots of places you could put it. So, you know, you could put it in super safe things, you know, maybe, I don't know what, UK, US government bonds, very low risk, low growth. Or you could put it in the stock market. You know, there are lots of different places you could put it, so then that will be about your appetite for risk, and it'll be about your desire for reward. So people who want a higher risk, higher reward might be inclined to invest in something like this. But they don't want to lose their money, and they do want the reward. So they need to make sure that investment is going to be justified. So they will look at the financials and say, okay, so if I put X amount of money in, how much am I going to get out? So that money could come out in form of, say, dividends, or that money could come out when they sell their stake, or when the investors sell the group of schools on to another investor, say that they want to see, and it maybe they do that in 5 years, it maybe they do that in 20 years. Again, it is a lot of the process is about matching the owner's needs and interests to the investors' needs and interests, and a lot of what we do essentially is finding the fit at that stage, and then what we do is school management. We do then the due diligence and acquisition and school management further down the line. There are other ways. I mean, not all owners are ready to sell. There are other ways of investing, and so some investors are prepared to take minority stakes, particularly if you have a school. Again, it depends on the school, but I mean, if you have a school that is really at the top of its game, very desirable school, but the owner doesn't want to sell for 10 years or more, then there might be interest for an investor in taking a minority stake with what they call pathway to control. So the idea would be is that they might buy a small stake, 5%, 10%, 20%, something like that. But the agreement would be that they would be the acquirer of the point at which the owner does decide to sell. So the owner would agree that they want to sell another 20%, or if they want to sell 51%, which would give the investors control, then those investors have what they call refusal. So the investor doesn't have to buy the stake. They might think, actually, do you know what? I've decided I don't really want to go any higher. I've changed my mind. I'm going to invest in South America or whatever, so they might turn it down. And so the owner would then be free to go and find another investor. But the investors have right of first refusal, so they would have the opportunity to acquire this very desirable school. Now, something that we're talking to our investors about, and also to Lanray, is whether that model could be open to a wide range of schools. And so we're looking at that model of as to whether that could be open to schools that were not, the one school that we want to acquire, but looking at it as a way of enabling investors to sort of dip their toe in the water without taking the huge full-on risk. And so we're exploring the idea of a process that goes from a small minority stake with some with some support into school improvement surveys, and then another minority stake with more school improvement, so opportunity to get to know everybody better. It de-risks it. The school can find out if they like us, we can find out, the investor can find out if they like the school, and then moving to 10%, and then moving to 100% over a period of time, but allowing for the fact that not everybody will want to make the whole journey. And so somebody might want to stick at 10%. In that case, they would need to commit to paying dividends. That level, it would look a bit more like a loan, because what you pay, if you pay a certain amount, say pay 11 grand for a stake in a school, and they pay interest, 10% of that as dividends, then that would actually, we hope that it could be comparable to a relatively low interest rate. Again, there is more of a risk there, because obviously that the bank has systems and processes for getting the money out of people for interest, and so it would be slightly riskier for the investors being able to demand their dividends. But you'd need to be very sure of the partnerships you were going into. But yes, I mean the short answer, yes. By the way, you can get copies of the slides. So send them to Lanray House actually. The short answer is there are a number of different models. And there are a number of different investors. I mean, at one end, there are impact investors who require a lower return for their money because they want to see if they can see a higher social impact. So the school improvement, the minority stake dividends, school improvement services route appeals to, we have an impact investor who's interested in that. So they're not looking for so much money back because part of their remit is about increasing the social impact. So horses for courses really is the short answer.
Thank you, Catherine. So I'll take Mrs. Osime from Global International College. She has her hands raised.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thank you, Catherine. That was really, really brilliant. And I think what I will say is that what you're doing is actually urgently needed in Nigeria. I was just paying very, very close attention to all your slides. And I know that in Nigeria, we're in the forefront of that because we're working a lot also with government to carry the public sector along as well. But my question is, I've listened to you carefully as well, and I understand the fact that investors are different. We've tried to do a bit of venture capital, talking to venture capital, but what we see coming out of venture capital is they want to invest a lot of money. So because in terms of returns, you're looking at money. So they're looking at, how do we get our returns within 5 years, which means we are looking at your student numbers being high, from the get-go, or do you have a large number of states that they just want to make the money? But I'm glad to hear. Now, my question is, because you mentioned in your slide a school child, when you go into a school, and I understand your role as technical advisors and together the whole package. So not necessarily being an investor. So when you go into a school, does the school still retain its identity? For example, Global International College, even if the investor takes about 49%, does the school still retain its identity? So all the investor comes in to do is to invest the funds and of course get their dividends. And then you work with the operational aspect in improving the school. So the school is still known. It's not an ESCO school, or is it an ESCO school? Or is it still retained as Global International College? And it still has its identity if the school is not looking at outright sale and obviously interested in investment for expansion.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Yes, it's a good question and a very important one. I think you're all really aware of how important a school identity is because you all come from schools, and it's something that parents and students and staff all buy into passionately. We would be foolish to mess with that. The Makini schools in Kenya had been running for 40 years. They continually win prizes for being one of the strongest brands in Kenya, one of the first companies to do this. And, they're recognized. Dr. Mary Okello has a Harvard business case written up about Makini, and there is another business case somewhere else. She's received a Global Entrepreneurs Award from Ernst & Young. This kind of reputation you don't mess with. But whatever kind of reputation, though I have to put it the other way around, actually, of course, is the school Kisubi that we took over had a bad reputation. It was known that the children were badly behaved, that they, had parties on the school site with alcohol and drugs, that the teachers weren't paid. So in that instance, we have actually retained the school's identity, but we've done our absolute best to clean it up. So I think that generally speaking, for schools, their identity is something that's incredibly powerful, incredibly special, and you would simply damage your investment. You would lose parents and students if you messed with that. And also, I mean, with things like teacher training and child-centered learning, you know, if people don't want it, they're not going to do it. You can't impose. People just won't do it. So you have to win people all the time, which is why I put that slide up actually about how much people really enjoyed and benefited from it, because it's always with permission. You know, we have to work with permission from the students, the staff, and the parents. Otherwise, nothing is going to happen. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is aligned with where people see value, that they feel that, oh yeah, this is useful, I'll do it. You know, oh yeah, could we have a bit more of that? I think that's very important. The school, we use our branding very discreetly. We talk about Makini being a Scholé school, but it's right at the bottom of the website. It's kind of invisible. It's a bit like if you think of, you know, Intel. I mean, Intel ran these advertising campaigns for years, you know, Intel Inside. And so this is still a Dell computer or a Hewlett Packard computer, but you've got Intel Inside kind of thing. And I think that's kind of how we think about it is, you know, we're there, but we're a business to business brand. We're not a business to community brand. The school brand is the business to community. And in terms of the school group, what we would want is the school group to be operating in a similar way. So we would say, you know, common standards, expectation that teachers are paid on time. You know, we would introduce common financial systems where possible. I mean, because schools often have their own systems and it's not practical to do that. But to get that kind of alignment of systems and values where possible. With regard to things like practices, lesson observations, learning walks, I mean, as an international school, you probably do that already, but introducing those, and the more commonality you have of systems, the greater the learning is across the group. Because then if you have an outstanding practitioner in one area, then, I mean, one of the most powerful things we did at the very beginning with Makini is we took them to an international school for a day, to just, you know, for a sort of study tour. And there's a huge amount of learning from sharing, from seeing what other schools are doing. And we also believe that every school has strengths, regardless of whether that school is an international, outstanding international school, or whether that school is a struggling local school. There are people in those schools who are doing great things, who are working hard and doing well. And there are things that every school can be proud of. So the process we see is a slow one of convergence rather than a rapid one of takeover. If there is a difference between 49% ownership and 51% ownership, and at that point you do hand control over. So things like staffing decisions or system decisions, operational decisions would not be the decision of the owner once that owner is no longer a majority shareholder. So that does make a difference, and that is how, you know, how companies' equity works. But at the point at which we are minority shareholders, then it, you know, then the executive decisions would be made entirely by the owner, by whoever is the 51% shareholder. So there's something there in the company structure that makes a difference. But no, I mean, I think the school identity is hugely important and should be preserved and enhanced.
Thank you,
Thank
Kath.
you.
Yeah, okay, so I have another question in the chat room, and they're asking if Scholé is interested in schools dedicated with children with special needs.
We don't have direct experience of running schools with special needs. I have to say, I would say never to any school, because I would want to understand the school better. But our education expertise in the UK is drawn from mainstream schools. However, what I would say is we do have a lot of expertise around special educational needs in mainstream, because in the UK, children with Obviously, we have a lot of children with dyslexia and ADHD, but we also have children with Down syndrome and autism who are educated mainstream, children with cerebral palsy. So very few in the UK, very few children actually go to special education needs schools. So I suppose it'd be a question of understanding what the school looked like and the children, the population it served. And so one thing we do, I should probably put that on my presentation actually, but raising awareness amongst classroom teachers about the special needs that some children have, how to identify them and how those children work best in the classroom is an area of expertise that we do have. So I think my answer to that would be really that everything is individual. And so I would certainly be interested in a conversation, but we haven't run any special needs schools in Africa, and in the UK it's a very specialist skill set.
All right, thank you, Catherine. We have someone saying thank you very much. This is exciting and most welcome conversation for them at their school. So we're looking forward to standard bearers getting in touch if they would like to continue the conversation. Yes, we have another question talking about slides. Yes, we will send out the slides to everyone after this session. And then there's a question that would Scholé work with a school that is in a rented apartment at the moment? What is your condition as regards whether the school owns the property?
So long as the school has a long lease on the property, that's fine. But again, it's about security of tenure. Is, you know, if you buy a school and it's only got a 1-year lease on a property, then and the landlord decides to turn it into a hotel, or decides that they want a hotel on that site, then your investment would be completely lost. So it is about the security of that investment. Okay.
Another question is, how long does the process take averagely? So from start to finish, like, you know, starting the conversation, moving to the term sheet, about, I mean, what is the average process?
There isn't really an average. A lot of it depends on the size and complexity of the school. So, I mean, the Kisubi process probably took us, I don't know, 6 to 9 months. The Makini process took nearly 2 years. And if it was a process of buying a minority share ownership, it might be quicker because it would hinge on whether or not we could secure the dividends. But if you could secure the dividends, then you're taking much lower risk. So, I mean, if you're buying like in Makini, if you're buying a group of, 9 schools for several $1 million, then you need to do a lot more due diligence and needs to be really thorough. So it does vary. It does vary. The other thing I would say is that everything's gone quite slow with COVID. So this definitely isn't a quick fix. There's no doubt about that. Our investors have paused raising money over the last 6 months because the people who they're looking at to create the fund are waiting to see what COVID's going to do to the market, and people are expecting there'll be some fallout. They're expecting some schools will not be able to survive. And some people are sort of waiting to to invest in schools that have survived. Other people are interested in rescuing schools, good schools that are on the verge of not surviving. So there's a diversity of views out there, but things are taking longer just because of the climate we're in. I mean, at a very simple level, just visiting a school to do due diligence, to gather all the paperwork, etc., is a challenge.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for the special needs school. They would be getting in touch to discuss further. We also have a question on your view on fluctuating rates of exchange. So we know that Naira is a bit so what has been your experience when it comes to exchange rates in terms of dividends, and how does that work?
So, I mean, everything's done in dollars. basically. And we haven't actually yet developed the broad sort of dividend offer. What we would do with dividends, though, is I think we'd set a percentage in local currency as a percentage expectation, and we would need to factor into long-term modelling for different scenarios to understand the risk there. In terms of acquisitions, the price, the term sheet is, and everything like that is all agreed in dollars. So to some extent, the owner takes the fluctuating rate of exchange risk or reward, depending. I mean, so that's kind of it's built into once a price is agreed, it's agreed in dollars.
Okay.
The cost of the due diligence.
Go on,
sorry, Lana. I was just seeing the next question, the cost of due diligence. Again, I mean, the cost is borne by the investors, but it depends on the scale of it depends on the scale of investment. There depends on the complexity of the investment. So a 10% investment in a school where you feel the dividends are secure, you wouldn't do as much due diligence, because in some senses, the process of, if you're working with that school for school improvement, that process, you get to know the school quite well. And so that becomes your due diligence. But if you're looking at an external acquisition of a very large organization, then the investors factor that into their expectations of return.
Okay. So the next one is your capacity development for the teachers. Does it extend to school exchanges or like strictly on-site training for teachers, or, you know, what kind of, how broad your teacher development?
We have taken head teachers over to the UK. We took our head teacher from Uganda and 3 head teachers from Kenya over to the UK, but I have to say it's a very high impact but very, very high cost, and again, this kind of thing has to be justified out of the income of the school. So again, you know, we did that we actually did it with Kisubi as well, but it would depend on the investors if they want to invest in that kind of scale of improvement. But it is expensive taking people over to the UK. It is a lot more cost effective. I mean, what a starting point for schools really is identifying the outstanding performers you've got in your own school and leveraging them, making sure that you know, that expertise is shared. I mean, in the UK, and I'm sure this is true across the globe, the what they call in-school variation is actually as great, if not greater, than the between school variation, which basically means that you know, your most outstanding teacher, the gap between your most outstanding teacher and your weakest teacher is as big as the gap between your school and another school. And so actually solving that in-school variation is as important as anything else, and leveraging the expertise that you already have is the most cost-effective way of doing it.
Okay. So can you work with a school that is already operating with a sizable population, but is looking for partnership in the area of managing operations of another branch of the school? So maybe they have already 2 schools and they're looking to have the 3rd school, and they're looking for Scholé to come on the 3rd school side, not the entire
okay. Okay. So in that instance, I'm not quite sure what model you've got in mind, but I mean, supposing it could be something like a simple management contract with no acquisition. We would. No, it would depend on the circumstances. That would be our lowest preference, if you like, of a simple management contract. So what we're really interested in is, what the investors are interested in is the acquisition. But if it was a management contract as part of an acquisition, so if they were, say, looking at investment in in the capital investment for the third site, say, and if that gave a percentage ownership of the group of schools, and if there was a pathway to control, i.e. there was an opportunity to acquire the other schools at a later date, that would be the most attractive option. So again, it sort of depends on what you're offering, what you're looking for, and where the fit is.
Okay. Is there a band of how much that can be invested in any one school, or you know, you are open?
Depends on the returns. Very much depends on the returns. I mean, if you're offering a 30% return on the investment, do you have people falling over themselves for it? It depends what you're offering. I mean, you know, if it's the whole school, if you talk about investment, meaning acquisition, then, you know, you can make acquisitions $5-10 million upwards. It depends on the turnover of the school. So the value of the school would be a multiple of the turnover. So you look at the EBITDA, so the earnings before interest and tax, depreciation and amortization. So that's the key number, is what's the EBITDA of the school, and then the value of the school is you multiply that up, and that gives you a value of the school.
All right.
And if it includes if it doesn't include the land and buildings, then you subtract something off the profit to account for rent, and then you multiply that up. So it depends entirely on, the investment is driven by the return, and by the value of the school.
Okay. So do you work with faith-based schools? Like, would you work?
We do. We do. I mean, Makini School is, I mean, most I don't know much about Nigeria, but religion is very important in the lives of people in Kenya, and certainly in Uganda, and I believe in most places in Africa. And Makini is a very Christian school, so we pray at the beginning of staff meetings, and it's something that's very important to people.
Yeah. Okay. So Merrick Victory Schools, they say here in Nigeria, we have 3 locations in Lagos with about 4,850 students, and lower basic and upper basic and secondary school. They pay a due, so they don't pay school fees, they pay dues. I think they're like a social impact type school, so they don't pay school fees, they pay levies or dues, if I have it right. Is that something that you can work around, or I mean, how does that work?
I couldn't give a clear answer without seeing the numbers, but it doesn't really matter how the students pay, but an investment decision would be based on the revenues of the school and the profit of the school. So we would look at your financials, basically, is what's your turnover been over the last 5 years, what's your costs, what's your net profit, because, as I said, the investors want a safe investment and they want a return, and so we need to create a business case which says, if you give this amount of money, the school can afford to pay you that in dividends. Or it would depend also on the potential of the school to grow. I mean, growth potential is always attractive to investors. I mean, one of the things they really liked about the school in Uganda, as I said, it was pretty dark when we took it on, but one of the things they liked about that is the school had capacity for far more students than what on the site, and so it meant that you can grow the school without putting up further buildings, because obviously putting up buildings is expensive, and so a school that's under capacity is actually quite attractive to investors in many ways. So yeah, it would depend on the numbers.
Okay.
Can't hear me.
Okay. So do talk to us so that we can see what the details are, and then we can move that forward. So they're asking, Jemima is asking if they can have the different investment offers and training modalities and what their requirements are. I think you've mentioned that, I mean, every single transaction is looked at on a case-by-case basis. I'm not sure there's a generic, but you can answer. What
no. It's, yeah. I think that's right. So, I mean, I think if we can understand more about your school and what your needs are, then that would be a good starting point for a conversation. So we would first of all sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and then we would ask you for your financials and for your data. And on the basis of that, we would form a view as to how attractive it was to invest, or what type of partnership might be attractive to investors. And we would then we discuss that and see, after you share your view as to what you're looking for, and we see whether there's a fit.
Yeah.
Or where the fit is.
Okay. So does the expansion process extend to establishing a secondary school? So like this school is probably
potentially.
Yeah, potentially. And I think you did that with was it Kasubi or Makini? You extended
Kasubi, we established a primary school. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, in Makini, we were looking at setting up secondary boarding in 2020 on one of the sites. Setting up a high school, because at the moment they only go up to upper primary, which is 8 years of primary school in Kenya. But I mean, that was sort of derailed by COVID. But again, it's all about the investment case. So, how many children do you think will come to your secondary school? What level of fees will they pay? How many? You obviously have some upfront costs. You've got diseconomies of scale in your first couple of years when you've only got a handful of children, but you have to have a whole teacher for half a class, and so it's about the business modeling there, and over what time do you think the school will be full and making a profit, etc., etc. So it does depend on the numbers.
Okay. So there's also a question on legal requirements involved in the partnership.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it's all very light, really. I mean, as I said, we sign a non-disclosure agreement, which is a mutual agreement. It basically means you can hand over your financials with confidence that we will not share them with anybody, but we do need to look at them. And that is a legally binding agreement, but it doesn't need to involve any lawyers. And then when we reach a term sheet, then that again it's legally binding. Then the real hard and that is legally binding, because once we've signed a term sheet, we would then sign that's initial term sheet. If we both agree to proceed from there, we will sign a second term sheet, which is it's a commitment on the investor's part to actually buy, and it's also on a commitment on the owner's part to actually sell, and that's the point at which you involve lawyers, because at that point the investors start to pay for due diligence, and so once they're paying out for something, they need to be sure that this is going to be seen through. And then obviously transfer of ownership of shares or of a business requires a lot of formal legal processes.
We have a final question that says, in what ways will partnership with Scholé impact on accreditation by UK bodies or other global educational bodies? So do you get that question?
I'm not sure I really understand the question.
Okay. You know that
I mean, it shouldn't really make any particular difference, but yeah, how do you understand the question, Lanre?
Okay, so what I think is that, a lot of our schools like to have international partnerships. So maybe they can take the Cambridge exams, IGCSEs, this accreditation process by UK, international.
Yep.
Yeah. Does that come with this partnership? Would that impact on them being able to work around getting those types of partnerships?
No, it's a completely separate process. I mean, our Makini school has just started delivering Cambridge over lockdown, actually, in September. And they have their own accreditation process that you need to go through to meet their requirements. We do have a working partnership with world-class schools, and one of our aspirations is to take Makini through the world-class schools process, because they are already one of the best. well, they are the best primary school in Kenya, and we think they potentially can be the best, one of the best in the world. But that's something that you know, is optional, and we'll do it when they feel ready for it.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no other questions, nobody raising their hands, no questions in the chat room, I think we have gotten to the end of the Q&A. The last thing for me to address, thank you, Catherine, for taking the time to explain or respond to everybody's question. And I believe that you've addressed everything. We would be, I'll be sharing my screen now, and I'll be, displaying our contact details for you to be able to get in touch with me for further information and to take the discussion further. So if you've heard this whole presentation, we've answered your questions, and you would like to move forward with the conversation, then please do get in touch with us. My email, my phone number, the phone number there is my WhatsApp number, so you can call me, you can send a WhatsApp, you can send me an official email, and we will be able to take this discussion further. Like Catherine mentioned, every single school is unique. We have to look at your situation uniquely, and we'll be able to discuss how to move forward. Just let me know, call, email, when you would like to take the discussions further. I already see a few of the schools on the call that are ready to move on. Thank you for showing interest, and I believe that after this call, we can start to have those conversations. And for those that have requested for the slides, we would be sending out the slides later today. Thank you so much. I hope you've all gotten my contact details. I'll just leave it on for 1 more minute, and we would like to close thereafter. Thank you very much. Every single person will get a slide as long as you were in you registered. So if you registered for this call, you would get the slides, we'll send everything to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate all of you for coming today. In the absence of any other question, Catherine, would you like to say bye to everyone?
So just muted myself because my children are in the background, but thank you very much, everyone, for your extremely interesting questions and for the opportunity to share our ambitions and hopes with you. We very much look forward to hearing from you, and we'd love to work with you. So thank you very much indeed, and hopefully we'll be working together in future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.